Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining for another class of Tanya. In the last lesson, we discussed a summary of chapter 12. We're not going to do another summary, just in one paragraph. We studied that brain's moach controls the heart. So we are able to tell the heart it's not healthy, it's against God's will, and fight it. Number two, the fact that always I have an emotional desire for food, to get angry, to stay in bed late, etc., they can be controlled by the mind. Number three is that the brains, the thought, are the finest part of our existence, and they are so close to the soul that we have very little control. So I can refrain from punching someone in the face. I can refrain from building. I can refrain from speaking. I cannot fully control what thoughts go through my mind. So when I hear someone's success and my thought is a negative thought about that person, there is very little I can do about it. In fact, God does not expect me to control. What the desired good is for us to not allow a second thought to come in. After that idea came up, we should say, this is wrong, this is unhealthy, this is against God, and push it away. In that way, thinking process is different than thought, than speech and action, because our control comes only when it becomes fully aware of the thought. That's when we can stop it. But the first idea, the first thought that enters our mind, it's out of control. Why is it crucial? It's crucial because we need to realize that that's the way the human being is. But more importantly, to realize that the negative thought has much more power and effect, negative or positive, than action or speech, because it affects the soul itself. And I've elaborated on that previously. If I have a positive thought of another person, or I'm thinking positively about myself, about my surrounding, about an animal, that affects in this physical universe. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, was asked once by a rabbi who told the Rebbe that the board of directors are continuously challenging him, and they are continuously acting like he is the enemy. And the Rebbe said to that rabbi, think positive about them. Feel the love towards them. It will penetrate and make them change. Simple as that. And the reason is because the thought travels without us seeing. So if someone hates you and you send him a nice chocolate basket, I'm sure it will change his heart. Maybe not the way you want, but a little bit at a time. Thinking is sending him a gift of chocolates in a positive way. By the way, the same applies in a negative way. So we need to value and pressure and hold it as great gift, the thinking process, and not allow us to say, well, nobody knows what's going on. I can imagine, I can think. It doesn't work like that. So wishful thinking in a negative way is in a way, can affect far greater than thought and action. Having said that, in the next two chapters, chapter 13 and chapter 14, the Rebbe said, it's time for us to get to know ourselves. Hi. And by the way, anything we discussed until now in the Kabbalah class, which we start next Wednesday, the 15th, it will be illuminated from a different perspective in such a beautiful way that it comes back to understanding the Tanya to a much deeper level. In the next two chapters, what the rabbi wants to do is allow us to discover ourselves fully and completely in two ways. Knowing our faults, our weaknesses, and also our addiction, our negative, evil desires, as well as the positive, our traits, our talents, our gifts in which we possess. Why is it important? The Rebbe, the previous Rebbe writes that in order for us to serve God, we need to know what we possess in order for us to serve God. And we need to know, just as we need to know what are our faults, so we can work on them, so we can guard ourselves, so we can walk around them. The same is in the positive. We need to know what are our strong points, so we can use them to serve God. We will, the chapter will be divided into three parts, just like I did in chapter 12. I think we should do this one. In this chapter, we will discover, number one, the idea of judges. And it's a very crucial point to understand that we possess two judges and then come a third judge to, so to say, make the final decision. But there are two judges here, not brains and heart. As we'll discover, until now, we spoke about the evil desire is in the heart, emotions. The godly soul is in the brains. It's thinking process, intellect. Now the rabbi wants to go on explain that both are judges, equally as powerful. Both come from sometimes common sense or lack thereof. The second chapter, the rabbi is going to talk about how do we reach a conclusion? What makes me decide small trivial decision, what color I should paint my home, what kind of car I want to drive, where am I going to eat breakfast, what kind of a phone service I'm going to get. There are decisions that we make every day, all day. Some of them affect us immediately, some of them no impact. It's just about what I like. It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of looks. There are many, many factors. All those decisions are made by two judges. And then there will be a third judge assisting us in making the decision. Because when you have two judges, usually they disagree. And then the third will side with one of the two, and that's where the decision will be. So that's point number two. Point number three, in this chapter, the Rebbe is going to address the question that we began the first chapter, and in the next two chapters, we'll be answering many of the questions that were asked at the beginning. One of the questions is, the Talmud tells us that even if the entire universe tells you you're a righteous man, consider yourself like a Rasha. Anybody remembers that, like a wicked man? And I was asking, how can you be a wicked man? If you're a wicked man, you're going to get depressed. You're going to be down. You're going to get lazy. You don't want to get up and walk. You don't want to socialize because you're a wicked person. How is it possible that Talmud tells us that we should consider ourselves like a wicked person? It will be addressed in the last part of this chapter. So again, there are three parts, and let's begin. We are on page 191. In the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe described the spiritual profile of the Beinoni. In the Beinoni's heart, said the Alter Rebbe, evil desires may often arise, but his divine soul constantly prevents such desire from finding expression in actual thought, speech, and action. On the contrary, these three soul garments are the exclusive domain of the divine soul and are utilized by the Beinoni only for thought, speech, and action of Torah study and fulfillment of the mitzvot. So in chapter 12, we talked about a Beinoni. A Beinoni's heart is very, very hot, very passionate. He wants to speak negatively. He wants to cheat. He wants to scream. He wants to lie. He wants to behave in an inappropriate way. However, a Beinoni will control the garments. thought, speech, and action will be purely for God's sake, only positive. In the souls themselves, the 10 attributes, it's all for grabs. There is evil soul, there is godly soul, they both are fighting each other. Now the rabbi continues on with the idea of a Beinoni. Accordingly, we may understand the comment of our sages that Beinonim are judged by both their good and evil inclination. Both judge him and dictate his conduct. As scriptural support for this contention, the Talmud cites. He says, the Rebbe explained, now we can understand why we are told that Beinoni is being judged by both souls. Because as we described explained in chapter 12 at length, the souls are fully awakened and alive, and they very hard, kicking very hard. The godly and the evil soul are equally as powerful. The only difference is the animal soul is not able to execute its desire into garments of speech, thought, and action. As it is written, says the Rebbe, he, the Almighty, stands at the right hand of the poor man and save him from them that judge his soul. The plural, them that judge, indicates the presence of two judges within the person, the evil inclination and the good. Says the Rebbe, we see in the Torah that God is standing next to the righteous, to the right person, to help him from the judges, meaning there are two judges, both are as equal and as powerful. We thus find that the Beinoni's inclination are described as his judges. Now, where the term Beinoni to be understood in its simple literal term sense of one who has an equal history of good deeds and bad, it should more properly be said that the Beinoni is ruled by both inclinations. For one to sin, his evil inclination must rule him. For him to do good, his good inclination must rule. The Beinoni who supposedly does both must be ruled and not merely judged by both. The rabbi say the fact that we say that they are judged, not ruled by two souls, it means that not two souls are ruling his behavior and behavior referring to the garments of thought, speech, and action are only ruled by one, by godly soul. However, the judges are there equally, both the godly and animal. However, according to the explanation of the term Beinoni given in the previous chapter, it is clear that indeed the Beinoni is merely judged by both inclinations, not ruled by both, as shall be explained presently. Says the Rebbe, note that our sages did not say he is ruled by both the good inclination and the evil, God forbid. Why? Because where the evil nature gains any rule and dominion, albeit momentarily, over the small city, that is, whenever the evil rules one's body, likened to a city which both the good inclination and the evil seek to conquer, one is deemed wicked, rasha, at such times. Rather, the evil inclination in the Beinoni is no more than, for example, a magistrate or judge who expresses his opinion on a point of law. Yet, in fact, his decision is not necessarily final, for there is another magistrate or judge who disagrees with him. In it then becomes necessary, in order to formulate a binding decision, to arbitrate between the two, and the final verdict will rest with the arbitrator. Let me explain. Until now, we were under the impression that passion comes from the evil soul, the heart, and contemplation and intellect come from the godly soul. Says the Rebbe, this is not the case. There are two judges. A judge can render a rule or say, just make a decision based on common sense. And they both are arguing each for their own sake. And that's what makes life so complex. There are many times where we are in a quandary. We don't know if what we want to do is right or not. I'm going to share with you some stories to illustrate the point, even though I think it's much simpler in our day-to-day life. The previous Rebbe brings a story of Reb Nachum of Chernobyl. Reb Nachum Chernobyler is a very famous rabbi who lived about 200 years ago. A rich man walked into the Rebbe for a blessing. As soon as the rabbi blessed him, he says, "Rabbi, I would like to leave a gift for you to do as you wish." And he gave him 300 rubles, which was a lot of money. 5 minutes later, a man knocks on the door and wants to speak to the rabbi. When the rabbi ushers him in, he tells the rabbi that he needs a blessing and advice because his son is about to get married and he has no money to marry off his son. Anyone who married a child will tell you it is extremely expensive. As much as you think it costs, it's probably twice as much. Just like any construction project, if you've been involved, so is with a house, building a house. Marriage is building a house. So the Rebbe turned to him and says, "And how much money do you need?" And he said, "How much? 300 rubles." So the Rebbe says to him, can you wait outside for 10 minutes? I want to contemplate, pray, meditate. Give me. When the man went out, the rabbi said to himself, "I have a 300 ruble I just got. I can give it to him. But on the other hand, I can open up a fund to support needy families. And I'll be able to help a minimum of 10 families with 30 rubles. Each one, it's a week's wage. They can buy fish and chicken for Shabbos. They can fix the shoes of the children. So why should I give him all 300? Maybe I should give him 150. As he's contemplating what's the right thing to do, he then says to himself, one of the ideas must come from godly soul, the other must come from the evil soul. Which one came from the evil soul? Ali, are you listening to the story? The one to give the 300 to the guys from the evil soul? What's the proof? You need to prove your point. It's up to God. It's up to God. All right. Anybody? Dave? Which one? Here is how he came to the conclusion. He says to create a fund to distribute the money to 10 families came from the evil soul stopping me from doing good. How do I know? He says, when the man gave me the 300 ruble, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. When the idea came to my mind, only when someone had a need and I was ready to give it to him. In other words, that idea came to stop me from doing something good. And therefore, he called the man and he gave him 300 rubles. Did you understand that? Right. Now you had two judges. They both use common sense. And as is known in the Chabad teaching, that the evil soul is dressed with a big strimal and a fur coat like the Hasidim or the zebra. Anybody heard the zebra? The zebra Hasidim in Jerusalem, where they're all gold and blue, gold and black stripes. They call them zebra. These are super duper, super black men. That's how the evil inclination looks like. He doesn't come to you and says, you know, walk around with no clothes. He doesn't come to you and say, tell everybody, I don't care about God. He says, no, you love God. Do what's right. And the actual behavior is pure evil. He is your friend. He is a chassid. He is religious, super religious. But the actual outcome is total, complete evil. And that's why Hasidim say, if you're not smart, you cannot serve God. Because to know how to conduct oneself, to decipher good from evil, I'm going to show some more stories. you only need to have comments. You only need to have a good deep thinking. What's the root? Where does it start from? And that will help you reach the idea. By the way, there is other ways to get us to help, but I don't want to veer. I'll get to it soon. I just want to go again over that idea. Helping 10 families is a great mitzvah. Actually, it will do good in affecting many more people, no doubt. But if it came as a reason to stop me from doing good, it cannot be good. It is pure evil. And that's how he was able to prove. You cannot just say, I guess, or I think that's wrong. That doesn't help. You need to have a proof. What's the proof? Another way to decipher is you need to have a friend, a mashpia, a spiritual guide that consult you. Even myself, I have someone whom I consult in every dilemma, both private or communal, because I need to be guided to do the right thing. And if I myself am sure I'm doing the right thing, that's not the case. Because the evil is so sly, he will make a person think that he's doing a mitzvah. I don't know if I shared with you, but it's worth sharing again. There is a Chassid who passed away not long ago. He was running the Chabad center in Kiryat Malachi. Kiryat Malachi is in the south. It's getting a lot of missiles. He was running the Chabad center in that village, in that section, in that neighborhood, but he felt that he was unappreciated, no budget, people were marking him down, people say that they can do a better job, you know, the usual, no matter how good you do, you always, you know. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe that he wants to quit, and he wrote down 10 reasons. Did I share that with you? He put down 10 points. Why should he be let go? And you'll go to the private sector, you'll sell telephones, or you'll go and sell insurance. The Rebbe responded to this, sent him back the point, and where the Rebbe, when he wrote down, and the following are 10 reasons I am not fit, and therefore I should quit, right? And the following, before the words are 10 reasons, the Rebbe made an arrow and says, and the most important one, an idea that comes from the evil inclination to get you not to do what God wants you. That's the first and most important one. In other words, all 10 reasons are valid and good points, but you do not serve God. It's not the right thing for you. You want to quit? At least you should know it came from the evil desire. It did not come from holiness. Common sense. I had an uncle who was the principal or the director, the dean of a large school, a vocational school, Chabad vocational school, that was received the award as best vocational school in Israel. They had 1,200 students, and half of them came from broken homes, and they had a dorm. So you can imagine what issues that they had: broken homes and substance abuse, and people who came from places that other children got, and he was doing it very well, except people that saw his success and talent couldn't stand it. And he wrote to the Rebbe that he wants to quit for his own sanity. I saw, because I was a yeshiva boy, when he came to the Rebbe to ask permission to quit, because he could be a teacher, he will make less money, but he'll sleep well at night, and wouldn't be embarrassed. He was people insult him in public just because he was so successful. And the Rebbe wrote to him that if he wants to serve the evil inclination, he can quit. But if he wants to serve God, he can continue. He did it 3 times. Usually when a chassid gets it once, you don't bother the Rebbe again, because you're wasting the Rebbe's time. But it really was very tough. And I'm not going to share all the challenges. I am his favorite nephew. His children say that I knew him. His son told me, I was in Israel. His son is a rabbi. His son told me publicly, he said that I knew his father better than he did, because he was very close with me. And I knew his challenges. And he wrote to the Rebbe a second and a third time. And each time the Rebbe responded, it's not the right thing. And the reason it's not the right thing is because the evil soul, the evil inclination is trying to convince you to do it, talking you into the idea that it is the right thing for you, but it's not. It's very, very difficult. That's why the Mishnah tells us, Aseh lecha rav, make upon yourself a rabbi, uknei lecha chaver, and acquire yourself a friend. And in Chabad Hasidim, it is so crucial that we must have a rabbi whom we consult, and it doesn't matter if we like what the rabbi said or not. Once we have a rabbi, it must be followed. By the way, it's part of Jewish law. And the other part, but even in a community where you have more than one rabbi, I grew up in a village where there are many rabbis. So you pick a rabbi, but you don't choose and pick based on the topic, you pick one. And the second one is acquire yourself a friend. Get yourself someone whom you can consult and share your secrets. And in this way, he can tell you from the outside what is right and what's not. We're going to talk about the third judge soon, but first we need to understand that we have many, many times and many occasions when we are certain that we serve God, it comes straight from the evil inclination. It doesn't come from the godly soul. Let's continue. Says the Rebbe, similarly, page 193. In the battle between the evil inclination and the good, the evil inclination states its opinion in the left part of the Benoni's heart. That is, it creates an evil desire in his heart and demands that he act accordingly, thus rendering judgment as to his future conduct. So sometimes I know it's not healthy for me, the chocolate, but I really want it, and nobody can stop me. And I'm going to take just a little bit. And if nobody watches, that doesn't count. There are many, many ways to learn to deceive ourselves. That's the evil inclination. Very, very sly, extremely bright. And he will come, as I said, sometimes using halacha, using Jewish law, using Jewish Torah to deceive us into acting against God. And it happens not just to someone who is not aware of Torah, myself, the Rebbe, Reb Nachum of Chernobyl, who was a very, very famous grand Rebbe, yet he needed 5 minutes to decide which way is the right way, because one of the ways is evil. And it happened to be that he was able to find a proof for it. That's the way we do. As I said, if it's hard to do it yourself, you get yourself someone else, a spiritual guide, someone else that you can trust and that is able to help you. Because the evil... So when I decide on a type of car that I drive, you can... everybody has a different... Someone wants it as a vehicle to take him somewhere. Another person wants to show off. A third person wants to have it because someone else has it. Everybody will have their reasons for buying the car. Everybody will have their reason for buying a phone. Everybody will have reasons for service, phone service, etc. There are many. We make decisions all day long, all the time. Some of the reasons will affect us in a big way. Some of them are not. All the decisions we make are based on the two judges. And some of them are evil sourced, and some of them are godly. It is not so easy, but it's possible for us to find and see where each one comes from. What's important for us is the trend. What's the trend? Are we allowing the animal? Because for a Benoni, he will never allow the animal soul to rule. The animal soul would say to him, you have to have this one because your neighbor has it. You have to prove to him that you're as rich as he is. The Benoni would say, that's not a good reason for me to buy a phone. I buy a phone to speak to people and to see my children when I look at the screen. That's the way I serve God. And therefore, I'll take whatever serves me, fulfill those needs. That's a Benoni. A non-Benoni is someone who is able to, from time to time, hopefully, find the reality, the root cause of those decisions. And if it's not from a good place, to be able to stop it. And this is what the rabbi is talking about.
So in essence, Rabbi, you can really twist many things around to make it sound like you're doing the right thing, when it's really not the right thing.
In essence, we are trained to do that. That's what the Talmud is all about.
Could you say a rabbi call because my neighbor has
The Talmud is all about going, we call it the grobe finger, with the thick finger. They always find what do you mean I'm wrong? I have a good reason, right? The Talmud tells us that there was a student who was able to find letaher, to purify, to make kosher sheretz, a dead mouse. 168 ways to prove to you. That's how bright this man was. 168 ways to prove that a dead mouse is kosher, that a sheretz, that a creepy crawly is kosher for consumption. And the Gemara says, but still, the Torah says it's not kosher. Simple as that. So with all the reasons, it will not change from the simple text that reads in the Torah. There are, this is a point that needs to be addressed, especially today, where everybody is entitled to their opinion. And it's not only their opinion, but they want to make sure everybody else is following. This is so wrong, so anti-Jewish, it's beyond. I just want to share with you that among Hasidim, the Rebbe, by the way, among Hasidim, it's a major issue because we need to be smart. We need to know right from wrong. And that's why we need all the guidance from a spiritual leader, from a rabbi, from people outside of yourself to be able to tell you, where are you going? Don't you realize? So among Hasidim, there are, among the fellow Hasidim of the Rebbe, there were very few that stood up as a symbol or example of the way to serve God. So they say the Rebbe had made people, Hasidim, in a certain way, and I'll explain in a moment, just as an example. The Rebbe made someone to become a doctor. He had no credentials. I don't know which college he attended to, but he became a doctor. And he was not just a doctor. The Rebbe would send him, and some say that the Rebbe once a year would give him a cake, lekach. Before Yom Kippur, you give a honey cake. A rabbi is usually giving a honey cake and wishes someone a sweet year. The Rebbe would give him a honey cake and he would mix it in his syringe. And when he gave shot, it would be part of that honey cake. Regardless, the Rebbe would send to this guy, and this guy cured. I have a cousin who broke his foot just before he got married. And the doctor said to him, you won't be able to dance at your wedding. This was 1976. This is a famous story he shares. So he went to the Rebbe before he left to Israel for the wedding because he was engaged. For those days, before you get married, you go for a private audience. And he told the Rebbe, he came in with suits, with gauze and pads or whatever on the leg. And he couldn't move. And the Rebbe asked him, why is he so depressed? So he said he's not allowed to dance at the wedding, his own wedding. So the Rebbe said to him, go to Dr. Zeligson. Go to this doctor, he will help you. This is not a joke. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said to him, how much money you have for medication? He says, money? What do I have money for? I had to borrow for the ticket to go to Israel. So the doctor says to him, can you afford to buy orange juice? Can you buy orange juice? He says, well, it's expensive, but because yeshiva boys don't buy orange juice. But if that's what I need, I'll do. So the doctor says, the next 4 days before you go to Israel, buy orange juice and drink a glass of orange juice in the morning, a glass of orange juice at night, and it will allow you to dance at the wedding. And guess what? He danced at the wedding. You can see pictures. There were no videos then, but you can see picture of him dancing. Orange juice cured him. So this is one guy Ali, why are you looking? You want to talk to this doctor, I see. So this doctor also helped me in some issues, but he was a known doctor. Nobody knew all his credentials. Maybe he did have credentials, I don't know, but the Rebbe would send patients to him, and the Rebbe would tell doctors before they did a procedure on a chassid to consult Dr. Zelickson. And they did, and miracles happened. In other words, it shows you that it's not necessarily the medicine, it's God. Then the Rebbe appointed someone a cantor. There was a chassid, came out from Russia. He's still around. His children are my age, but I knew him very well. And the Rebbe says to him, your job would be to go around new Russian immigrants they love. He came out in 1971, I think. And he lived in Israel for 10 years. And then he came to America. And I always says, you travel around in communities like in Brooklyn, you have Canarsie, and you have Starret City. There are different places where there's a large community of Russians. You go there, announce that you're a cantor from Russia, a famous cantor from Russia is coming, do a cantorial evening, and teach them Torah. Guess what? He became a cantor. He would fill up halls until today. His children have nothing to do with cantorial. Usually it goes from the children, nothing. But these are known as a chazan. Another one the rabbi made is a rabbi. I'm not going to say his name, but he's well known. Became a chief rabbi of an entire country. He didn't learn as a yeshiva boy, but he was very close to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe appointed him a rabbi. And he says to the rabbi, there's a large Orthodox community there. What should I do? So the Rebbe says to him, do you know how to use the phone? And he said, yeah. He says, well, this is a country in Europe. The Rebbe says, anytime somebody asks you a question, you tell them it's a very, very deep question. You have to think about it. They should come back in the evening. And once they leave, they pick up the phone and you call the rabbi in New York and he'll give you the answer. And so he did. He just passed away a year ago. He became an extremely big rabbi. His children are all Chabad. Most of them are Chabad rabbis. Very, very. The Rebbe made a cantor, the Rebbe made a doctor, the Rebbe made a rabbi. And there were people who served the Rebbe. There was a man, that's the one I wanted to talk about, that no matter how great you are, no matter how learned you are, if the Rebbe said to do something, it is the best thing for you. And he was a well-known rabbi, quite the opposite. He was very knowledgeable. I believe he knew the entire Talmud. And he was very well accomplished rabbi. He did not serve in a community. I think he's a slaughterer. He's a shochet. And he would go out to seek Jewish men to put on tefillin. And by doing so, he would embarrass the rest of the people in the synagogue who all thought, it's not for me, it's for yeshiva boys. I'm married, I have children, I have grandchildren. I'm going to stand under the sun talking to young boys, asking them. By doing so, he was a symbol of nullification to the Rebbe. Why do I say that? It's because this idea that veering off sometimes deranged us, totally opposite God, is not that you have an evil guy with big muscles and tattoo all over their body, and they say, come with me, we're going to party. It's a very, very gentle tzaddik that with a long beard, dresses with a big hat. That's the way it's described in Kabbalah. And he tells you, come on, let's study together, let's pray together, let's serve God. But the motive and the purpose is totally against God. And that's where we need to have that call for judgment to decipher right from wrong. Did I make myself clear? No questions. Okay. What?
How do you know?
So this is a challenge that you and I can assume equally face. I have the same doubts, the same questions. Decisions are being made all the time by us. A tzaddik naturally will do only the right choice, will have only the right choices because he has no second judge. He's lacking that judge. A Beinoni will have both strong powerful judges, and you'll be able to decipher. A wicked person will swing from place to place based on, we talked about myriads of levels. Sometimes one day you're in a good spot, another day you're in a bad spot. Sometimes you made a decision, then you realize you're wrong, you change. It happens all the time. So my way of doing it, connecting to the Rebbe, studying what the Rebbe says and doing. You know, sometimes people say to me, how can you do that? You look like you're a very stupid guy. It doesn't make sense. And I say, I'm sorry, that's what God wants me to do. That's what the Rebbe said. And therefore, I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. I have nothing to worry. I have nothing to fear. The same is about right from wrong. If you stick with honesty to God's words and say, God, tell me what's the right thing, it will help you. I'm not saying 100%, I'm not saying you, but it will guide you, it will give you a much smoother, it will smooth the path. In addition, you need assistance with the outside. You need to have a friend to be able to help you and guide you. You need to have a rabbi to be able to guide you, without which you will fail. No doubt. The question is, you'll fail all the time, part of the time, little of the time. But that's part of life. Anybody other question? Yes.
Where do you go astray when someone you just mentioned that goes along with the Becker's struggle? I mean, it says, come, let's learn and let's sit down. Where are you going astray?
So, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect human being. But to answer your question, I will put myself in the shoes of a perfect person, okay? I will say to myself, what's the reason behind? What's the motive? What's the motive? Does he want to convince me to go partying and eating not kosher? Does he want to go and collect funds or tell people that he's honest in business because he partners with me? What's the motive? If there is an ulterior motive, then you say to yourself, it's not the right thing. You know how many times I refused seemingly mitzvot, good deeds, all the time. The most extreme one is when people give you tzedakah and they want you to cheat, to give them to inflate the contribution. This is a big no-no, there's no doubt. But there are many times we had once somebody who promised $1 million to build a synagogue. And I questioned that because the board, I relied on others, but I questioned that. So he took me to the bank across the street. The Barnett Bank used to be, and the bank manager, he talked to her. She should open up at 7 a.m. before minyan. I went there with him, and she told me, "Don't worry." The idea was that the board told me to make sure to give us. He wanted to give $1 million, but I should tell the whole community, promote that he's doing it for his parents. I brought it to the board. The board said to ask him to write the check to give the money. He says, no, I will not give you the money because I'm not sure you're going to build. If I'm not sure you're going to spend it on vacation, who knows on what. So the board went back and said to me, first, let's verify that he has such kind of money. So I went with him to the bank. And the bank manager, I knew the manager, she said, yeah, he has that kind of money in the account. So the board came back and said to us, put it in an escrow, that the rabbi cannot use it, you cannot use it, only for the bank will use it to pay the construction, the design, whatever. He did not want to do that, he refused to do that. And that's when he, with all my strong desire, this was a year after we moved here, I really wanted to put a nice building. I said to myself, something don't make sense. And I said to the guy, if you're not willing to do that, I don't think I can help you. Oh, you're so upset. Well, turned out that I'm going to skip the descent to where he came from, but turned out that he started a public traded stock, share or company. And to inflate the value, he wanted to show the world that he has money and that he is very charitable. It was all to a balloon to blow up his company. That's why he wasn't willing to part of his money. He wasn't willing. He wasn't going to give us the money. His company went down bankrupt, and one of our members, dear member that some of you may remember, or he passed away, had lost everything while investing in that company, despite that I shared with them that this guy is not acting properly. But this was a great test. The only thing that saved me is simply because I consulted the board. I went to the board and I moved myself and my desires. I really wanted to have a nice, decent building here, and we felt to that close. I followed their advice, and God says He will guide us and make sure that the right decision is done through the channels of other people. Simple as that. So that's one. That's, again, I'm showing it you my example. I'm not going to show it you all the times that I failed, but I'm going to show it you that when you say to God, God, help me, tell me what's right, and you don't get attached or emotional, we hope that you'll make the right choice. There are many, many challenges that I face. I'm sure everybody else too. And they seemingly both choices are serving God. Yet one of them is complete evil and the other is good. I'm hoping that what decisions I make are the godly choice because I tried my best. There is nothing else I can say. Can we continue? Any questions? No. Okay. This is the first time you are exposed to this idea? Yeah.
The way you put it is.
Okay. Linda, you wanted to say something?
It's the first time that's this deep, you know, how you're presenting it. Yeah.
Well, it's a common issue.
This is a day-to-day issue.
Generals
Learn.
sitting and making the decisions about where to drop the bombs have the same issues.
All right. Yes.
I'm not saying one way or the other, but they have to think about what.
And you know what the decision was made?
What?
Based on what they decide, you know?
What do they decide?
They decide based on the largest city they can pick, the most inhabitants. Did you know that?
Not necessarily.
We had a member here by the name of Monroe Spen. He was a member of Temple Emmanuel until 6 days of war. He was a photographer in the army, and he was on the Enola Gay, and the plane that carried the bomb. He was the one in charge of taking photos. And his house was covered with photos because it issued thousands of photos. And only very few made it. All of them, the rest of them he kept.
What was his name?
Monroe Spen, S-P-E-N. He's buried in Temple Emmanuel. I knew him very well. After the 6-day war, he believed that Mashiach should be arriving. It changed his life. And for his entire life, he devoted to make Jews settle everywhere in Jerusalem. He gave everything he had. He had a real estate. He divorced his wife. His daughters became religious as a result. And he was a very unique, very unusual. Meir Kahana was assassinated. His yahrzeit was last week, I think, in 1993, I believe, in New York. In New York. That morning, Meir Kahana was in Monroe Spen's house on Footville Road east of I-75, and I went to see him. Every single one of the right wing in Israel went through Monroe Spen because he was a good fundraiser, but of lesser memory. Monroe Spen was on the Enola Gay, so he would tell me a lot of stories about. He was on the plane twice.
We know a gentleman, or knew a gentleman, who was a mathematician. He was on one of the, when the Enola game went up, 2 planes accompanied them, and they were observers, and he was on
One of them.
One of these observation planes.
Monroe was on the Enola Gay. He showed me a picture of his camera. The camera was huge, you can imagine. It was a big, big device. It's like 6 foot tall and pointed in the window. And he was a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do a little more because we're going to get into the second point.
Rabbi, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
You asked, this is the first time that this concept was.
Yes.
Yes, with regard to this, the godly soul and the,
Animals. So.
animals, but, I can draw a parallel to, addiction and the 12-step programs. Because in those programs, the only way you can be successful is if you have a sponsor who carries you through it. That sponsor gets to know you intimately. They know your shortcomings, they know your behaviors and your motivations. And then when you make decisions about things that are, pretty basically, are pretty significant in life, you speak to that sponsor and the sponsor gives you guidance.
So this is exact.
Very similar.
This is where it's coming from, by the way, and we're going to go even deeper. We're going to go farther than where we are now. But right now, we need to know our shortcoming. Our shortcoming, in a big way, is the animal soul disguise itself as the godly soul, convincing you that what you're doing is the right thing. Addiction is the same thing. It's the first one is the last one, right? Convincing you it's only one time, and you don't without realizing how devastating the effect would be. From the heart, the desire ascends to the mind for contemplation. This ascent is automatic. Whenever a desire is awakened in the heart, the brain will contemplate it. And right away, immediately upon its descent into the brain, it is challenged by the second judge, the divine soul, residing in the brain, which extends into the right part of the heart, where the good inclination abides, that is, revealed himself. The good inclination is actually the voice of the divine soul's emotional attributes and is hence active in the right part of the heart. See chapter 9. The good inclination thus battles the evil, ensuring that the latter's passion not be realized. For the opinion of the good inclination is that all of the body's faculties and organs be utilized only for matters of holiness. And the final verdict rests with the arbitrator, the Holy One, blessed be he, who comes to the aid of the good inclination, enabling it to prevail over the evil inclination. We will stop right here. Just what we're going to get into the second point. So the first point we discovered is that every one of us possesses two judges. Both will convince you, make you desire, you have to have it. It will make your day so much better. It will enhance your life. Everybody else does it. Whatever excuse in the book, emotional or intellectual, they'll use, and the godly will do the same. They are fighting. In a Benoni, the godly soul will win. In a Rasha, sometimes one or the other, because there is going to be a third judge. What we discovered now is there is a third judge, which is God infusing energy, and it is considered a judge, as we'll discover, because it's a choice. It's still a choice whether to accept it or not. And that's going to be next week. And finally, that will answer why does it say in the Torah that every person must consider themselves like wicked, like if they are wicked, even if they are complete righteous people. Thank you very much, and we'll continue next week. Bye, everybody.